Afternoon, fellow preppers. Welcome back to another video with your old Uncle Carl here on the Easy Prepping channel. Today, if you can't tell, we're going to be discussing potatoes and how to keep them long term. But before we go into that, I'd like to discuss, in my last video, I mentioned probably finding another venue to post these videos on. And several of you recommended a site called Rumble, which I am checking into. A very good friend of mine recommended Rumble. In fact, he mentioned that when he goes back out to my channel later, he doesn't see the comments that he left. And I started paying better attention there, and several comments that I had seen there before and I had replied to disappeared. So I want to tell you that over all of my videos so far, there's been maybe 3 or 4 comments that I've removed. As the creator and the channel owner, I can do that. I can click on them and say remove. And those were ones where people were just being, well, quite frankly, they were jerks. So I removed them. Anyway, other than that, I don't remove comments. That's YouTube doing that. Well, a few years ago, I noticed that we were throwing away, well, seemed like quite a bit of food. And especially things like, well, potatoes. I would buy normally a 5-pound bag, and just between the wife and I, we wouldn't use the whole thing before they'd start turning to the dark side. So I started researching ways to preserve them, to keep them longer, shelf stable. Anyway, the first one I came across is called freeze drying. And if you haven't looked, well, I didn't have $3,000 to drop on a freeze dryer. And the next step, it's not as good, but it's dehydrating. They won't keep as long, and you don't maintain as much of the nutritional value, but you're not throwing away your food. And I have done several in the past, but I thought I'd do a video on how to dehydrate your food. Now, today we're going to dehydrate some potatoes. By the way, it's going to be a 2-day video. When I first got my dehydrator, I did some research, well, YouTube videos, and I think the first thing I tried was maybe banana chips. And the person in the YouTube video recommended leaving them in the dehydrator for about, I think it was 8 to 10 hours. So I did the 10 hours and they weren't done. Still mushy. You want things to be completely dry, crispy. Anyway, now when I start a dehydrator, doing just about anything, I will set it for 28 to 30 hours and just let it run. Go back the next day. Most things are done by then. I've had a few things that weren't, and may go into them other times on different, well, blueberries. If you try dehydrating blueberries, even 24 hours doesn't dry them out. Now, getting into the potatoes, we're going to want to slice very evenly and thin, because the thicker they are, the longer it's going to take for them to dry. And doing them thin, you might be able to use them for, well, like potato chips. You're going to want to cut your, whatever it is you're putting in your dehydrator, nice and uniform. You're going to want thin slices because they'll dehydrate much faster. Therefore, you're probably not going to want to use your old dependable kitchen knife because you're just not going to get that accurate, and, well, you might cut yourself. Anyway, get you one of these slicer dicer type contraptions. This is the first time I'm trying this one, so we're going into this one first time together. This one is the Sedum 6-in-1 foldable kitchen grater. And no, they didn't send it to me free, and they're not paying me. Anyway, it comes with, I've got the one on here just to do slices even, but you've got other options here. I'm not going to go into all these at the time now, but let's get started some slicing. We're going to move them from this bowl to this bowl as we go. And then I've got here the racks that go into the dehydrator. I will load them all up here doing this and bring you back from time to time, show you how it's going. And then I'll probably just take pictures in where I've got the dehydrator in the basement. And let's proceed. This thing is designed so that you hopefully don't lose any digits. Let's find a good one here for demonstrating. take this, and it's got a bunch of needle points up inside here, and it comes apart kind of, well, so you get more of it sliced as you're going through. Let's see if we can get this on here. Push. And I'm trying to get those needles up in there. And we'll start going across the blade. And if you can see them coming out from underneath there, getting real thin slices of tater. So this would be a good one for turning them into potato chips. And I'll get through one whole potato here on video. Ow, get out of there. Oh, by the way, another thing I've done in the past is canning potatoes. I haven't done that recently because I've still got quite a few left. Well, it gets it down to where there's just that much left. And as you can see, that made a large batch of tater slices here. If you're wanting to do this to make your own potato chips, and you see these are about thin enough, you'd probably want to do some salt on them, spread over. Well, just put them in your bowl, salt them up, put them in there. I don't plan on doing that because I'm just going to vacuum pack them and keep them for where we can use for later. Well, put in soups and stews and things. That way they'll rehydrate while they're cooking in with the soup and or stew. I've got two of the potatoes sliced up here, just a small and a medium-sized one. But before I go any further, I want to start putting them out on the trays so that I don't slice up more than what I have room for in the dehydrator. Now, when you lay these out on your trays, you want to make sure you can get them in there fairly tight. You just don't want hardly any overlapping. One thing I found on doing some before, that you overlap stuff, it'll kind of glue together with the other pieces as they're drying. So I will get these laid out on a sheet here, and we'll bring you back in a minute to show you. Well, as you can see, I've got one tray full here. Can't tilt it too much, they'll slide off of there. But I'll bring you back when I've got all the trays full before I head to the basement. Okay, fellow preppers, brought you back for, I now have 6 trays full. That's what my dehydrator holds. And actually, I got a whole lot faster as I went along using this slicer dicer thing. You just takes you got to kind of know the knack, get used to it. Anyway, I'll get some pictures of these as they're going into the dehydrator in the basement. I just don't want to haul my lights, camera, and everything else down there, or it up here, as it puts out quite a bit of heat. And I'd rather have that heat emitted where it's cooler in the basement. Maybe my air conditioner won't have to fight as hard against it. So I'll bring you back tomorrow, and we'll see how these turned out. Well, fellow preppers, as I've said more than once, learn from my successes, but learn from my failures too. I always try to learn from my mistakes. And this batch of taters, something went wrong. It's a mistake. I don't know if you could see that kind of gray look to them, but it's not something that I would want to eat. Anyway, there is a saying, especially when dealing with food and that you're trying to store for longer periods of time, and that is, when in doubt, throw it out. So these will be heading directly to the trash can. I will do some research to try to figure out what I did wrong here. I suspect that I didn't keep them in water or something, a solution, while they were sitting waiting to go onto the trays. Perhaps they needed to be blanched. That's where they're in boiling water for just a minute or two. I'm not sure where I went wrong. I'm going to do some research, and we will redo this video at another time when it's a success. But I know I've done it right before. Here are, same thing, red skinned potatoes that I did 622. And you can see they're fine. And they've been in this jar dehydrated almost a year. And here's another 622 jar, zucchini. I'm thinking maybe I got that dehydrator about a year ago because several of my jars are labeled 622. But this failed. Do not do it this way. So, from your old Uncle Carl here, today's quote is, if you at first don't succeed, try again. Thank you for watching.